TV, Rell TV. This ain't the Shade Room or TMZ, cause on Rell TV, ain't tryna get canceled like R. Kelly, cause it's Rell TV.
And welcome to the very first episode of Rell TV. It's your boy Rell. I created this show to talk about and rate our favorite classic TV shows from the 90s up to the early 2000s. So for the first episode, I felt like it was right to start with TGIF Fridays. If you don't remember, TGIF was one of the most lit segments of TV shows for teenagers and adults too as well. Like Friday nights, if you was in the crib, you was home, you turned TGIF on. I think it started like 8 to like 10, had 4 different shows, and the shows changed. So we're gonna start with TGIF Fridays, and one of the best shows, one of my favorite shows, would be Family Matters. So Family Matters, I mean, if you don't know, it's about the Winslow family. It was Carl. Carl was he was a cop in Chicago. He was dealing with real life shit. Like, he had a full family in his crib. He had his wife. He had 3 kids, 2 girls, and Eddie. He had his mom was living there. You know, she was older. He had his nephew and his sister-in-law. They were living there. She was a single mom. They were living there. You know, they was living there. So they had about 8 people living there. Like, it was a pretty big. It was a big house, but it wasn't like Will Smith, Fresh Prince big. It wasn't a mansion. I don't know how many bedrooms they had, but they had a solid 8 in there at least. Actually, that show should have been called Full House, but I mean, Carl was dealing with a lot of shit. He had his family there. I mean, they always had friends over. Steve was there all the time. Sometimes he was there as 2 people. Like, so it was between Steve, Waldo was there. Steve was bringing his girl there, Myra. Like, it was a lot going on. They had at least between 8 to 12 people at any time in the Winslow household. So, I mean, he was dealing with that. And it was a great show. Like, they covered a lot of different shit. Like, you know, their kids had a job at the little restaurant in the beginning. You know, there was like gang shit, real life shit, Chicago shit. Like, it was a really good show. And then there were certain things that like that kind of bothered me a little bit. I mean, the main thing would be like how they just changed people out. Like, first it was the daughter, Judy, I think her name was, and it was like she just vanished. Like, she was the youngest one, but somehow it's like, did she run away? Like, you know, they said that she like left and then became porn star or some crazy shit. But I'm like, they didn't even acknowledge that she was just gone. It's like, our youngest kid is just gone. Boom. Next, we just want to keep it moving. And then like the mom, she was older, you know, so like they didn't really talk about her. You know, she died, R.I.P. if she did. But I mean, they didn't really like give her a little memorial episode, or did they? Maybe I don't remember. I don't really remember they even acknowledging like grandma's death and shit. So her, and then the aunt, like, she left. All right, she was an adult. She should leave. Like, she's living in their crib, whatever. But she left her kid there. Like, she didn't. I don't remember her coming back for visits. Like, she really just left her kid with her sister and just boogie. They didn't even say nothing about it. Like, then the replacement with little TJ came in. It's like, what kind of family? That shit really threw me off. And they also changed Harriet Winslow, the mom. Like, they changed to light-skinned Harriet Winslow, and they didn't really say nothing about it. I mean, I get it. It happens all the time. Like, they did it in Fresh Prince, but they did acknowledge it in Fresh Prince. Like Jazz did make a little joke, like, doesn't she look a little different? Like, I mean, they did do some kind of acknowledgement in Fresh Prince. Like, Family Matters, they were changing people out, and they were just like, hey, who's the next one? Here's the next person. Boom. But other than that, it's like one of the classic shows of the 90s. It was, you know, it was a great show. And then it started to go a little left because it started being like more of like a sci-fi type show. I mean, I guess they wanted to focus a little bit more on Urkel, and he was a very smart kid. You know, he was always doing, you know, some wild shit. And it's like, then he had Stefan. He created Stefan, which is like, he changed the DNA, which was cool. But then I think he cloned them because at some point they were both together, so I think he cloned them, and then they were able to like make other people. Like he had like little Bruce Lee shit, like he turned into like Bruce Lee, and he was allowing other people. Then I think Carl turned into little Bruce Lee, little TJ I think did too. Like then they started doing like teleporting and shit. Remember they had that episode where the family went to Paris. They like teleported from the living room to Paris, which was pretty dope. Like because I mean, just the idea of it. I mean, that could be a show in itself. Because if I was able to teleport anywhere without paying these fees or on airline tickets, without going online, like, come on, I would be everywhere every weekend. I would just be in this different country. So, but that was pretty dope. And then towards the end, it was like Steve started being like an astronaut or some shit. He like went into space, and I think he got lost or it's some wild shit like that. It started going a little. It's starting to go away from the family matters part for me. So I mean, that's why I get Family Matters about an 8.2 out of 10. The next one here is another classic, Boy Meets World. So Boy Meets World, you know, was about a kid. It was Corey. He was a boy. He was meeting the world, and he was going through real life shit for a kid, teenager. Well, I guess preteen, going into his teens, whatever. You know, he had a girlfriend. You know, he was dealing with like acne, shit like that, like the regular shit that they were dealing with in the 90s. But I mean, the show was good. It was a really good show. But for me, it's a show that I started to watch again when I was older, and I was just like, it doesn't feel the same. It's like I felt like Corey was crying a lot. Like he was making the worst out of situations that wasn't that bad. You know what I'm saying? Like Corey had a nice family. Corey had a nice mom and dad. You know, working class people. He had a brother. He had a younger sister. He had middle child syndrome, and as a middle child, I know exactly how that is. And he just complained about a lot of shit. He had Topanga, which is probably the baddest girl in the school, probably one of the baddest girls on TV at that point. And he was still complaining. Like, it's like, come on, Corey. And for me, his friend Sean was for me the main character, because he was the one that was really dealing with real life shit. Like Sean had a rough upbringing. Like his mom, she was on drugs. She left him.
Your mother, she took off.
Oh, just go home and wait. She always comes back.
Oh, not that easy. This time she took the house.
Dad, he was an alcoholic. He raised them, but then he left them. It's like he was getting a little fucked up. Left them, boom.
If you're not coming back right now, then you be the one to tell your son.
Well, I just did.
Huh?
Well, if I know my boy even money when adults are talking about him, he's probably somewhere behind them listening. Hi there, big guy.
None of you want me. Well, that's fine. I don't need any of you. I never needed anybody.
He had to live with his teacher at some point. Mostly he was living with Corey a lot too, but he had to live with the teacher. The teacher had to like fake adopt him and shit because his family just were all fucked up. His cousins were fucked up. They were criminals. Remember the episode where Corey recorded them and then like doing some criminal shit. So his whole family was all fucked up. But he still made it through high school. So he made it through high school. He went out with a black chick. Like he had to deal with the interracial shit. Even back then, they was looking at him kind of weird, and he was still loyal to the black chick. Out here, Corey was out here cheating on Topanga at the little retreat and shit. Like, come on, like the show should have been about Sean, because he was really dealing with real life shit. He was the boy that was meeting the world. Like he had to do adult shit when he was like 13 years old. And then they also had Mr. Feeney, who was like the neighbor of Corey, and he was their teacher at first. in junior high school, then he became the principal in high school, and then they went to college, and somehow he was a professor or some shit. Like, I mean, he was going through the rankings, and I respect Mr. Feeney. He was very intelligent. He was given a lot of knowledge and shit, and it's like, but he really was with every level with Corey, and that's why Corey was spoiled. Like, I feel like the show would have been better if it was about Sean, but I'ma still give Boy Meets World a solid 7.9 out of 10. Next was Step by Step. It had Suzanne Summers and it had Patrick Duffy. It was kind of like a modern day Brady Bunch type shit. It was like she had kids before them, married, I guess, and they were married. The guy was married, had kids, they came together. Kids were like rivals and shit. They hate each other, then they started loving each other and all that. I mean, it was a classic show from the 90s. I'm not going to get into it much. Yeah, I could go watch that. But I would give that one a solid 7.1 out of 10. Last show here that we're going to talk about for part 1 of TGIF is Hanging with Mr. Cooper. So I do have a bias here because I still fucking watch Hanging with Mr. Cooper. One of my favorite shows. If you don't know, it's about Mark Cooper. He was player for the Warriors, and he got hurt, he got an injury, and he had to retire, and then he became a teacher, and he's a basketball coach and all that shit in Oakland. And one of my favorite shows. I mean, it wasn't that many seasons. I think it was only like 3 or 4 seasons, and they kind of changed the cast around after the first. He was living with two women. And then the second season, his cousin moved in with Raven Simone, who was his cousin, little cousin. So they always have to bring a little kid in. I guess that's the thing for black shows for the most part. At that point, you gotta throw a little kid in, especially with Raven Simone. It was like Raven Simone back then was like bringing on Chris Brown to do a feature. Now it's like you gotta bring her in. She gonna get the ratings up. So they threw her in there. Great show. It wasn't really it wasn't even like a show that was about anything in particular. He was just a teacher just finding his way, so to speak, and in Oakland, it had Omar Gooding, and then, I mean, it's just a great show. And so I'll give Hang with Mr. Cooper, I'll be biased here, I give it an 8.1 out of 10. So thank you for episode 1, part 1, TGI Fridays. Make sure you get the next episode, part 2, and stay tuned for more episodes. It's your boy Rell TV, and we out of here.